The text message came at 2 in the morning. Your sister has been arrested for identity theft and fraud. You need to call Detective Ramirez immediately. But that was not even the worst part. The worst part was that I was the one who made the call that got her arrested. I was the one who handed over the evidence, who filed the police report, who looked a detective in the eye and said yes. I want to press charges against my own sister. You are probably wondering what kind of person does that. What kind of monster sends their only living family member to prison? Trust me, I asked myself that same question 1,000 times. But before you judge me, before you decide I am the villain in this story, let me take you back to the night that changed everything. The night I came home to find strangers partying in my house, drinking my wine, and sleeping in my bed. The night I discovered my sister had not just crossed a line, she had obliterated it. It was 3 weeks before Christmas, and I was driving through a blizzard to reach my cabin in the Colorado mountains. I had been dreaming about this moment for months. 10 days of complete solitude. No phone calls from Chloe begging for money. No guilt trips about being a terrible sister. No more playing ATM for someone who saw me as nothing more than a walking bank account. Just me, a roaring fire, and enough silence to finally hear my own thoughts again. The drive took 4 hours instead of 2 because of the snow. My hands were cramped from gripping the steering wheel, my eyes burning from staring at white flakes illuminated by my headlights. Every mile that passed, I felt the tension in my shoulders easing. By the time I turned onto the private road that led to my property, I was already planning my first morning. Coffee on the deck, watching the sunrise over the lake, maybe a hike through the forest before the real cold set in. But as my headlights swept across the clearing where my cabin sat, my foot slammed on the brake so hard the car skidded on the icy road. 2 cars I did not recognize were parked in my driveway. Every single light in the house was blazing. Music was pounding so loudly I could hear the bass thumping even through my closed windows. And through the floor-to-ceiling windows I had specifically installed to enjoy the peaceful view, I could see people, lots of people, moving around in my living room like they owned the place. My first thought was that I had somehow driven to the wrong cabin. But no, there was my mailbox with my name painted on it. There was the custom wooden sign I had commissioned that read Lake Haven. There was the stone pathway I had laid myself, stone by stone. The summer after I bought this place, my second thought was robbery. Someone had broken in and was throwing a party while they ransacked my home. My hand moved to my phone, a fingers already dialing 911. Then I saw her, through the window, framed by the golden light like she was posing for a magazine spread. Was Chloe, my baby sister. She was laughing, head thrown back, gesturing with a wine glass in her hand. And she was wearing my burgundy cashmere sweater, the one that cost $400, the one I had only worn twice because I was saving it for something special. I sat there in my car, engine still running, watching this scene unfold like it was happening to someone else. Chloe was not being held hostage. She was not scared. She was the hostess, holding court in the center of my living room, surrounded by people I had never seen before, except I recognized 2 of them. Ethan, her fiancé, was leaning against my kitchen counter, and standing near the fireplace, drinks in hand and looking completely at home, were his parents, Robert and Patricia Hayes. Something was very wrong. I turned off the engine and stepped out into the snow. It was coming down heavy now, the kind of storm that would probably trap us here for days once the roads became impassable. My boots crunched on the frozen ground as I walked toward my own front door, and with each step, I felt a strange sensation building in my chest. Not kite anger yet. Something colder. Something that felt like a door closing inside me. I did not knock. Why would I knock on my own door? The moment I stepped inside, I was hit by a wall of heat. Noise and cigarette smoke. My stomach turned. I had a strict no smoking policy in the cabin. The smell of tobacco and vanilla vape clouds was already seeping into my furniture. My curtains. Everything I had carefully chosen and maintained, but I barely noticed any of that, because my eyes had locked onto the fireplace, onto the mantel where my most precious possession should have been. The photograph was gone, the last picture of my parents, taken 6 months before they died in a car accident. Mom in her blue dress, Dad with his arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling at the camera with no idea how little time they had left. That photograph had sat above that fireplace for 3 years. The heart of this house. The reason I bought this place at all, because it felt like a space where their memory could live safely. It was gone, and in its place was a portrait I had never seen before. The Hayes family, all 4 of them in matching cream-colored sweaters and khaki pants, looking like they had just stepped out of a country club brochure, smiling down at me from my wall in my house, above my fireplace. That was when the cold feeling in my chest crystallized into something sharp and final. The room must have gone quiet, because suddenly everyone was staring at me. 15, maybe 20 people I did not know, all holding drinks and plates of food, all looking confused about who this wet, angry woman was, and why she was standing in the doorway like she had just seen a ghost. Chloe saw me first. For just a fraction of a second, maybe half a heartbeat. I saw panic flash across her face, but it was gone so fast I almost thought I imagined it, replaced by that practiced look of innocent surprise she had perfected over the years. "Oh my God, Eleanor," she said, her voice bright and loud enough to carry over the lingering music. "You are here. I thought you were spending the holidays in New York with your work people." She said it like I was the one who was confused, like I was the one in the wrong place. I stood there, snow melting off my coat onto my hardwood floors, and stared at my sister. Really looked at her for maybe the first time in years. At the way she held my wine glass like it belonged to her. At the way she stood in the center of my living room like she was the owner and I was the unexpected guest. At the way she smiled at me with absolute confidence. No shame. No apology. Nothing but the expectation that I would go along with whatever story she had told these people. And in that moment, standing in the ruins of my sanctuary, with strangers eating my food and my parents' photograph gone, and my sister wearing my clothes, I made a decision that would change both of our lives forever. If you have ever been pushed so far that something inside you just snaps, if you have ever reached the point where you realized you could not take one more second of being used and disrespected, then you know exactly how I felt in that moment. And if you want to find out what I did next, how I took back everything she stole from me and made her face consequences for the first time in her life, you need to hit that like button right now. I subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me if you have ever had to cut off a toxic family member, because what happens next is going to shock you, and you are not going to want to miss a single detail. But to understand why I did what I did, why I was willing to burn down my entire relationship with the only family I had left, you need to know the whole story. You need to understand how we got here, how my baby sister became someone I barely recognized, and how I became the person who enabled her every step of the way. So let me take you back to the beginning. I bought the cabin 3 years ago, with money I had saved from years of brutal work hours and strategic investments. While other people my age were spending their 20s partying and traveling, I was building my career in corporate finance, sacrificing weekends and holidays, pushing through exhaustion and doubt. The cabin was supposed to be my reward. Me escape. The one place in the world that was entirely mine, nestled in the mountains, 2 hours outside of Denver. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a pristine lake, a stone fireplace I had personally restored, and enough solitude to finally hear my own thoughts. Chloe was 5 years younger than me, and from the moment our parents died in a car accident when I was 24 and she was 19, I had taken on the role of her protector, her provider, her entire support system. Our parents had not left much, just enough to cover funeral expenses and a small amount that I immediately put toward Chloe's college tuition. I told myself it was what Mom and Dad would have wanted. I told myself I was being a good sister. What I did not see, what I refused to see for years, was that I was not helping Chloe grow. I was enabling her to remain perpetually dependent, perpetually entitled, perpetually convinced that the world owed her something simply because she existed. It started small. She needed help with rent one month because her part-time job at a boutique did not pay enough. I covered it. Then it became a pattern. Every month, like clockwork, there was some crisis, some emergency, some reason why she could not make ends meet. Her car broke down and needed a $2,000 repair. Her roommate moved out unexpectedly and she could not afford the full rent. She needed a new laptop for school. She needed professional clothes for an internship. She needed. And I gave. And gave. And gave. Meanwhile, Chloe was living a lifestyle that her actual income could never support. She went out to expensive restaurants multiple times a week, posting pictures on social media with captions about treating herself. She bought designer handbags and shoes that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She took spontaneous weekend trips to Las Vegas and Miami with friends, always managing to find money for that, but never for her rent or utilities. When I gently suggested she might need to budget better or cut back on luxuries, she would cry and accuse me of not understanding how hard her life was, how she was still grieving our parents, how she needed these small joys to cope with her depression. And I, drowning in my own grief that I never allowed myself to process because I was too busy taking care of her, would apologize and transfer more money into her account. The situation escalated when she started dating Ethan Hayes 2 years ago. Ethan came from money. Real money. The kind that bought country club memberships and summer homes in the Hamptons. His parents, Robert and Patricia Hayes, were the type of people who measured worth in stock portfolios and social connections. They were charming on the surface, but underneath that practiced smile was a cold calculation, an assessment of whether you were valuable enough to warrant their time and attention. I should have known something was wrong when Chloe suddenly started asking me more invasive questions about my finances. How much did I make exactly? What was my savings account balance? Did I have any investments? I told her it was private, that we did not need to discuss my money in detail. But she persisted with that wounded puppy dog expression she had perfected, claiming she just wanted to understand how I had been so successful so she could learn from me. Like a fool. I gave her enough information to be dangerous. Ethan proposed to Chloe 6 months ago, and that was when the requests became demands. She needed me to help pay for the wedding. Of course, because even though the Hayes family had money, they had certain expectations about financial contributions from both sides, and she could not possibly ask them to pay for everything. I found myself writing checks for her wedding dress, the engagement party, the bridal shower, her bachelorette trip to Napa Valley. Every time I mentioned that I was stretched thin, that I had my own financial goals and plans, Chloe would launch into a speech about how I was the only family she had left, how our parents would have wanted me to be there for her on the most important day of her life, how I was being selfish when she had asked for so little over the years. So little. The irony would have been funny if it had not been so devastating. I started to notice other things too. Chloe had begun speaking about me in a particular way to Ethan and his family. Not quite lies, but not quite truth either. She would mention my cabin as our cabin, suggesting it was some kind of family property rather than something I had purchased entirely on my own. She would talk about her difficult childhood and how she had to basically raise herself, conveniently omitting the fact that I had put my own life on hold to make sure she had everything she needed. The Hayes family ate it up. Patricia Hayes once told me, with that syrupy sweet smile of hers, how wonderful it was that Chloe was so independent and self-made despite her tragic past. I felt my jaw clench but said nothing. What was the point? They had already decided who I was in this narrative. The successful older sister who had somehow failed to adequately support her poor younger sibling. 3 weeks ago, I told Chloe I needed to set some boundaries. I explained, as calmly as I could, that I would no longer be able to provide the same level of financial support once she was married. She would have Ethan and his family, and it was time for her to stand on her own 2 feet. I told her I loved her, that I would always be her sister, but that our current dynamic was not healthy for either of us. She stared at me like I had slapped her. Then came the tears, the accusations, the threats. I was abandoning her. I was jealous of her happiness with Ethan. I was cruel and heartless and nothing like our parents, who would be ashamed of me if they could see what I had become. That conversation ended with her storming out of my apartment, and we had barely spoken since. I told myself it was for the best, that she needed space to process, that eventually she would understand I was doing this out of love, not malice. I decided to spend the 10 days before Christmas at the cabin, to give both of us distance and to recharge before the holiday chaos. I needed the peace, the silence, the chance to reconnect with myself away from the constant demands and guilt trips. I left Denver late on a Friday evening, driving through increasingly heavy snowfall, my mind already relaxing as I anticipated the solitude ahead. The drive took longer than usual because of the weather, and by the time I reached the turnoff for the cabin road, it was past midnight. I was exhausted, ready to collapse into my own bed. Maybe light a fire and sip some tea before falling asleep. But as I rounded the final curve and my headlights swept across the property, I saw two unfamiliar cars parked in the driveway. Every light in the cabin was blazing. Music was blaring so loudly I could hear it from outside with my windows rolled up. My first thought was that I had somehow driven to the wrong place. That in my fatigue I had gotten confused. But no, there was my mailbox with my name on it. There was the hand-carved wooden sign I had commissioned that read Lake Haven. My second thought was that someone had broken in, that I was about to walk into a robbery in progress. My hand moved toward my phone, ready to call the police. When I saw her through the window, Chloe, laughing, gesturing wildly with a wineglass in her hand, wearing my cashmere sweater, the burgundy one, that had cost me nearly $400 and that I had been saving for a special occasion. She was not just in my cabin, she was holding court, playing hostess, acting as if she owned the place. I sat in my car for a full minute, trying to process what I was seeing, trying to convince myself there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe she had asked to borrow the cabin and I had forgotten. Maybe there was an emergency and she needed a place to stay. Maybe I was hallucinating from exhaustion and stress. But deep down, I knew. This was Chloe doing what Chloe always did, taking what she wanted and assuming I would either not notice or not care enough to stop her. I got out of my car, my legs shaking with a combination of rage and disbelief. Snow was falling heavily now, collecting on my hair and shoulders as I walked toward the front door. I did not bother knocking. This was my house. The scene inside was worse than what I had glimpsed through the window. There were at least 15 people crammed into my living room, none of whom I recognized except for Chloe, Ethan, and his parents. Someone had set up a massive artificial Christmas tree that blocked half of my view of the lake, decorated with the kind of cheap, flashy ornaments you buy in bulk at discount stores. My carefully arranged furniture had been shoved aside to make room for folding tables covered in half-eaten food and empty bottles. The smell of cigarette smoke and cheap perfume hung heavy in the air. But it was the fireplace that truly broke me. The photograph of my parents was gone, replaced by a large portrait of the Hayes family. All four of them dressed in matching cream-colored sweaters and khakis, smiling like they were posing for a country club newsletter. I felt something crack inside my chest. Something that had been straining for years, finally snapping clean in two. Chloe saw me first. For just a fraction of a second, I saw panic flash across her face, but it was quickly replaced by that familiar expression of innocent surprise, the one she used whenever she was caught doing something she should not be doing and needed to spin it in her favor. "Oh, Eleanor," she said brightly, her voice carrying over the music and chatter. "You are back early. I thought you were staying in New York through the holidays with your work partners." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at me, and I realized with a sick feeling that they all thought this was normal, that they all believed Chloe had every right to be here. I did not respond to her immediately. I walked slowly through the room, taking in every detail of the violation. My leather couch had a red wine stain. Someone had used my vintage record player as a drink coaster, leaving a water ring on the wood. The door to my bedroom was open, and I could see through to the unmade bed. The clothes scattered across the floor that were definitely not mine. "What is this?" "Chloe," I said quietly, and the ice in my voice made several people shift uncomfortably. She laughed. That tinkling fake laugh she used when she was performing for an audience. "What do you mean? I told everyone you said we could use the cabin for a pre-wedding celebration." "You know, our cabin. Our cabin." The words hit me like a physical blow. I turned to face her fully, and for the first time in years, I did not try to hide my anger. "This is not our cabin," I said, my voice rising. "This is my cabin, that I bought, with my money, and you do not have permission to be here, let alone to throw a party and move in your boyfriend's entire family." Ethan stepped forward, his face flushed either from alcohol or embarrassment. "Eleanor," he stammered. "I am so sorry. We thought Chloe had cleared this with you." "She lied," I said flatly, my eyes never leaving Chloe's face. "She lied to all of you." Robert Hayes moved to stand beside his son, his expression hardening into something cold and threatening. "Now, Miss Eleanor," he said in that Patronizing tone wealthy men use when they are about to gaslight you. Chloe clearly communicated that this was a family property. Surely you are not going to cause a scene over a simple misunderstanding during the holiday season. The audacity of it took my breath away. He was standing in my home, that I had been illegally invaded, and he was accusing me of causing a scene. I looked around the room at all these strangers. These people who had eaten my food, drunk my wine, smoked in my home, moved my furniture, and replaced my parents' photograph with their own. And I felt a clarity I had not experienced in years. Everyone needs to leave, I said. My voice calm now. Deadly calm. You have 24 hours to vacate this property, clean up every single thing you have touched, and return my home to its original condition. If you are not gone by tomorrow night at this exact time, I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Chloe's mask finally slipped. You cannot do this, she hissed. All pretense of sweetness gone. I am your sister. No, I said, walking toward the fireplace and carefully taking down the Hayes family portrait. You stopped being my sister the moment you chose to violate the one place I asked you to respect. You are just a trespasser now. Chloe. Just someone who takes and thinks there will never be consequences. I picked up the portrait and walked over to Patricia Hayes, holding it out to her. Your family photo, I said. Please take it and go. The room erupted in chaos. Chloe started crying. Loud theatrical sobs designed to make me look like a monster. Ethan tried to apologize while simultaneously defending Chloe. Robert Hayes threatened to call his lawyer. Several of the party guests started gathering their belongings, clearly wanting to escape the awkward situation. I stood there in the center of my ruined living room and felt nothing but exhausted relief. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for 5 years, since the day our parents died and I decided I had to be everything for Chloe, finally lifted. I turned and walked back out into the snow, got in my car, and drove to a run-down motel 20 minutes away. The room smelled like mildew, and the heater rattled. But as I lay on the lumpy mattress staring at the water-stained ceiling, I felt more at peace than I had in years. The next morning, I woke up with a clear head and an even clearer purpose. I drove back to the cabin around noon, half expecting to find it still full of people. But it was empty and immaculate. Tu immaculate. The frantic cleaning was not born from remorse but from fear. From Chloe finally realizing I was serious. My parents' photograph was back above the fireplace, but something about the placement was off. Like whoever hung it did so in a hurry. The wine stain on the couch had been scrubbed but not quite removed. Every surface gleamed, but the smell of cleaning products could not quite mask the underlying violation. I called Jason Miller, a friend from law school who had become one of the city's most respected attorneys, specializing in family law and financial disputes. I had not spoken to Jason in over a year, but when I explained the situation, he agreed to meet me that afternoon. We sat in his office as snow fell softly outside the windows, and I told him everything. Not just about the cabin invasion, but about the years of financial support, the manipulation. The sense that Chloe had built her entire adult life on the foundation of my sacrifice without ever acknowledging or appreciating it. Jason listened without interrupting, taking notes in his precise handwriting. When I finished, he looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and determination. Eleanor, he said gently, you understand that what you are describing is not just family drama. If Chloe has been using your identity or financial information without permission, if she has been misrepresenting the nature of her access to your assets, these could be crimes. And at the very least, you need to protect yourself legally. I want her to face consequences. I told him, my voice steady, not because I want revenge, but because she needs to understand that her actions have real repercussions. I have spent 5 years protecting her from reality, and all it has done is make her worse. Over the next week, Jason helped me systematically dismantle the support structure I had built around Chloe. Every email I sent, every phone call I made, felt like cutting away a piece of dead tissue. Painful but necessary. First, I contacted Chloe's landlord and terminated the arrangement where I co-signed her lease and covered her rent. Under the terms of the lease, this meant she would be responsible for the full amount going forward, or would need to vacate the apartment within 60 days. Then I called the auto financing company that held the loan on the Jeep Chloe drove I had been making the payments for 18 months, and it was time to stop. I canceled the automatic transfers and informed them that any future payments would need to come directly from Chloe. I canceled my authorization on her credit cards, removed myself as a guarantor on her utility bills, and closed the joint bank account I had foolishly opened 3 years ago that Chloe had used as her personal ATM without ever contributing a single deposit. Each action was documented, formal, and irreversible. The response came faster than I expected. My phone exploded with messages from Chloe. Evolution from sweet to desperate to vicious in the span of hours. The first messages were textbook manipulation. Ellie, please. I know you are upset about the cabin and I am so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. Can we please talk about this? I love you so much and I cannot lose you. When I did not respond, the tone shifted. You are really going to throw away our entire relationship over one mistake? What would Mom and Dad think? They raised us to support each other, to be a family. How can you be so cold? By that evening, the mask was completely off. You selfish bitch. You are trying to destroy my life because you are jealous that I found someone who actually loves me. You want me to be as miserable and alone as you are. I hope you choke on all that money you care about more than your own sister. I saved every message, every voicemail, every email. Jason had advised me to document everything, and I was meticulous. The real chaos started 3 days after I cut off the financial support. Chloe showed up at my office downtown, pushing past the receptionist and barging into a meeting I was having with potential investors. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and she was screaming loud enough that security was called within minutes. You are killing me, she shrieked, as 2 security guards tried to escort her out. You want me to be homeless, you want me to starve, what kind of monster are you? The investors stared at me with shocked expressions, and I felt my carefully constructed professional reputation cracking. I apologized profusely and rescheduled the meeting. But the damage was done. Within hours, rumors were circulating in my professional circle about the crazy sister who had caused a scene, about how I must have done something terrible to provoke such a reaction. That night, I found out that Chloe and the Hayes family had started a campaign against me. They were telling anyone who would listen that I had promised to help pay for the wedding and then cruelly backed out at the last minute. That I had always been jealous of Chloe's happiness. That I was trying to sabotage her relationship because I was bitter and alone. The whispers reached my firm. 2 colleagues stopped talking when I walked into the break room. A client mentioned, almost casually, that they had heard some concerning things about my character and wanted to make sure there were no issues that might affect our business relationship. I lost a major contract because the client decided they did not want to work with someone who had such negative family drama. The contract would have been worth $200,000 in fees. I called Jason, my hands shaking with rage and frustration. They are destroying my reputation. I told him, they are lying about me to anyone who will listen, and it is affecting my career. Then we sue them. He said simply, Eleanor, what they are doing is defamation. It is tortious interference with your business relationships. We can prove actual damages. Let me send cease and desist letters first, and if they do not stop, we file suit. It, I said, but Jason had more to tell me. As he was gathering evidence for the potential lawsuit, he had started digging deeper into Chloe's finances and her relationship with Ethan. What he found was worse than either of us had imagined. The Jeep that I had been making payments on was not actually in Chloe's name. It was registered to Hayes Consulting Group, Ethan's family business, and the payments had been coming out of the company account. But Ethan had been submitting those payments as legitimate business expenses, claiming the vehicle was used for client meetings and site visits, when in reality Chloe used it exclusively for personal errands and shopping trips. Ethan had been embezzling from his own family's company to support Chloe's lifestyle, and if his parents found out, the consequences would be severe. But that was not even the worst of it. Jason discovered that Chloe had used my personal information she had access to because I had listed her as an emergency contact on various documents and had foolishly shared details about my finances, to open multiple credit cards and small loans in my name. She had been careful, keeping the balances low enough that I had not noticed the inquiries on my credit report, using a P.O. box as the billing address, so I never received statements. She had stolen my identity. My own sister had committed fraud using my name, my social security number, my credit history. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I felt physically ill. This was not impulsive or thoughtless. This was premeditated theft, done by someone who knew exactly what she was doing and chose to do it anyway. I want to file a police report, I told Jason, and I want to report Ethan's embezzlement to his company. Eleanor, he said carefully, if you do this, there is no going back. Chloe could face criminal charges. Ethan could lose his job and face prosecution. The Hayes family will come after you with everything they have. Good, I said. I am done being the person people can hurt without consequences. File everything. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, police statements, and strategy meetings. I met with Detective Sarah Ramirez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who handled white-collar crime and identity theft cases. She listened to my story, examined the evidence Jason had compiled, and nodded slowly. Miss Thompson, she said, I want you to understand what you are setting in motion. Your sister will be arrested. She will be charged with identity theft, fraud, and potentially other crimes depending on what else we find. The young man, Ethan Hayes, you will be investigated for embezzlement. These are serious charges with serious consequences. I understand, I said, and I would not be doing this if there was any other way. But detective, what they did was not just wrong. It was criminal. And if I do not hold them accountable, they will do this to someone else. She gave me a look of respect. Most people do not have the courage to prosecute family members. She said, you are doing the right thing. Even though it does not feel good. She was right. It did not feel good. It felt like I was tearing apart the last remnants of my family, destroying the only connection I had to my childhood and my parents. But every time I wavered, I thought about that photograph of my parents being taken down and replaced, about the credit card bills accumulating in my name, about years of manipulation and lies. Chloe was arrested on a Tuesday morning. I was not there, but Jason called to tell me the news. She had been picked up at the apartment I had been paying for, the one she now could not afford. While she was packing her belongings after receiving an eviction notice, the charges were extensive identity theft, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The prosecution was confident they had enough evidence for conviction. Ethan was fired from Hayes Consulting Group the same day. Once his parents were informed of the embezzlement investigation, Robert Hayes, the same man who had so smugly lectured me about causing a scene, released a statement distancing the family from both Ethan and Chloe, claiming they had no knowledge of any criminal activity and would cooperate fully with law enforcement. The speed with which they threw their own son under the bus was breathtaking. Money and reputation mattered more than family, at least to people like the Hayes. The defamation lawsuit moved forward simultaneously. Jason filed suit against Chloe, Ethan, and Robert and Patricia Hayes for damages to my professional reputation and the contracts I had lost as a direct result of their coordinated campaign of lies. I received an email from Patricia Hayes, the first and only time she contacted me directly. It was brief and cold, Miss Thompson. You have destroyed a young man's career and are prosecuting a grieving young woman who only wanted her sister's love. I hope you can live with yourself. I deleted it without responding. Her opinion meant nothing to me. The court proceedings took months. I testified in both the criminal trial and the civil suit, recounting in painful detail the years of manipulation, the financial exploitation, and the ultimate betrayal. Chloe's defense attorney tried to paint me as a vindictive, jealous sister who resented Chloe's happiness. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements, credit card applications with my forged signature, emails where Chloe explicitly discussed ways to extract more money from me, text messages where she laughed with friends about how easy it was to manipulate me. All of it entered into evidence, all of it laying bare the calculated cruelty behind her actions. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, followed by probation and mandatory restitution of the money she had stolen. The civil suit resulted in a judgment of $375,000 against all defendants, jointly and severally liable. I knew I would likely never collect the full amount. But that was not the point. The point was the public record. the legal acknowledgement that what they had done was wrong. The day Chloe was sentenced, I went to visit her in the holding cell before she was transferred to the correctional facility. I did not have to go. Jason advised against it, but I needed to see her one more time. I needed to say what I had been unable to say for 5 years. She looked small in the orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face puffy from crying. When she saw me approach, her expression cycled rapidly through hope, anger, and finally, cold hatred. "Come to gloat?" she asked bitterly. I sat down across from her, separated by plexiglass and phones. "No," I said quietly. "I came to tell you that I forgive you." She laughed, a harsh sound. "You forgive me. You destroyed my entire life and you forgive me. Chloe, you destroyed your own life?" I said. "I just stopped enabling you to destroy mine along with it. Everything that has happened to you is a consequence of choices you made. Choices to lie, to steal, to manipulate people who loved you. You do not love me." She spat. "If you loved me, you would have helped me. You would have understood. I did help you," I said. "For 5 years, I gave you everything. My money, my time, my energy, my peace of mind. I sacrificed my own happiness to make sure you were okay. And you thanked me by stealing from me, lying about me, and treating my home like your personal property." She was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. What was I supposed to do? "Eleanor, I did not have your advantages, your perfect career, your perfect life. You had every advantage I had," I said firmly. "We went through the same trauma. We lost the same parents. The difference is that I chose to work through my grief and build something, while you chose to weaponize yours and use it as an excuse to hurt people." I stood up, preparing to leave. "I hope prison gives you time to figure out who you want to be," I said, "because the person you have been is not sustainable. Chloe, she will just keep destroying relationships and opportunities until there is nothing left." Chloe just stared at me, her eyes empty. "I hope you are happy," she whispered. "I am not happy," I told her honestly, "but I am free. And that is more valuable than anything else." I hung up the phone and walked away, and I did not look back. The months after the trial were strange. I had expected to feel triumph or satisfaction, but mostly I just felt tired and sad. Sad for the sister I had lost. Sad for the years I had wasted trying to save someone who did not want to be saved. Sad for our parents who had dreamed of their daughters supporting each other through life. But alongside the sadness was something else: space. Room to breathe. Room to think. Room to figure out who Eleanor Thompson was when she was not defined by being Chloe's caretaker and ATM. My career recovered faster than I expected. The clients who had abandoned me when the rumors were flying returned once the truth came out, embarrassed by how quickly they had believed the worst. My firm promoted me to Director of Strategic Investments, a position that came with significant autonomy and a substantial raise. I started therapy, something I should have done years ago. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped me understand the complex dynamics of our relationship, how I had been parentified after our parents' death, how I had confused enabling with love, how I had lost myself in the role of rescuer. "It hurts less each day," I told her during one session about 6 months after the trial. "That is how healing works," she said gently. "Not all at once, but gradually, until one day you realize the pain is not the dominant thing in your life anymore." I renovated the cabin, stripping away every trace of that terrible night. I repainted the walls in soft, calming colors. I bought new furniture that reflected my taste, not some generic mountain cabin aesthetic. I hired a local artist to create a custom shelf for my parents' photograph, a place of honor that could never be disturbed again. I started inviting friends up, people who respected my space and appreciated the sanctuary I had created. We had quiet dinners overlooking the lake, morning hikes through the forest, evenings by the fire talking about books and dreams and the complicated business of being human. One of those evenings, Jason was there. He had become more than just my attorney over the past year. He had become my friend, my confidant, someone who had seen me at my absolute worst and had not judged or abandoned me. We were sitting on the deck watching the sunset turn the lake into liquid gold when he said, carefully, "Eleanor, I need to tell you something. I turned to look at him, my heart suddenly beating faster. I think I am falling in love with you, he said. And I need you to know that I would never want to take advantage of you, especially after everything you have been through. If you do not feel the same way, I will respect that completely and we can just stay friends. I stared at him, this good man, who had fought for me when I could not fight for myself, who had never once asked for anything in return, who looked at me like I was someone worth knowing. Jason, I said slowly, I think I have been falling in love with you too. I was just too scared to admit it. He smiled, that warm, genuine smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners, and reached for my hand. We have time, he said. No rush. Just whenever you are ready. That was 18 months ago. Jason and I have been together officially for a year now, taking things slowly. Building something based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than need or obligation. He never tries to fix me or save me. He just stands beside me as an equal partner. And that is the most revolutionary thing I have ever experienced. Chloe was released from prison 4 months ago after serving 14 months of her sentence. Her attorney contacted Jason to inform us that she was being released and to ask if I would be willing to meet with her as part of her rehabilitation program. I declined. I am not obligated to give her my time or my presence just because she served her sentence. Dr. Martinez reminded me, forgiveness does not require reconciliation. But last week, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Chloe, handwritten on plain paper. Dear Eleanor, it began. I know I do not deserve your attention or your forgiveness. I know what I did to you was unforgivable, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. I am not writing to ask for money or help or anything except for you to know that I finally understand what I put you through. Prison gave me a lot of time to think, and I realize now that I was not just using you financially. I was emotionally abusive, manipulative, and cruel. I blamed you for my problems instead of taking responsibility for my own life. I do not know if you will ever want to have a relationship with me again, and I understand if you do not, but I want you to know that I am trying to be better. I am working at a grocery store, living in a small apartment that I pay for myself, going to therapy twice a week. I am learning what it means to actually be an adult, to take care of myself, to not expect other people to solve my problems. I hope you are happy and at peace. You deserve both of those things. With regret and hope, Chloe. I read the letter 3 times. Sitting at my kitchen table with morning light streaming through the windows. Jason found me there when he came over for breakfast. How do you feel? He asked, reading the letter over my shoulder. I do not know. I admit it. Part of me wants to reach out. Part of me thinks it is just another manipulation. And part of me does not care either way. Because I have built a life that does not revolve around her anymore. Then do not decide right now, he said wisely. You do not owe her an immediate response or any response at all. He was right. Of course. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, neither responding nor discarding it. Maybe someday I will feel ready to see her, to cautiously rebuild some kind of relationship if she has truly changed. Or maybe I will not. And that is okay too, because I finally understand something crucial. I am not responsible for Chloe's happiness, her growth, or her redemption. Those are her jobs, her challenges, her opportunities. My job is to live my own life with integrity and joy, to nurture relationships that are reciprocal and healthy, to protect the peace I have fought so hard to achieve. Last weekend, Jason and I were back at the cabin. It was the anniversary of that terrible night when I found my home invaded, and I wanted to reclaim the date, to turn it into something positive. We spent the day hiking, cooked dinner together, and sat on the deck, watching the stars emerge in the clear mountain sky. The lake was perfectly still, reflecting the heavens like a mirror. You know what is strange, I said to Jason. I am grateful it happened. He looked at me in surprise. The cabin invasion. All of it, I said. The invasion was just the final straw. But I mean the whole thing. Because if Chloe had not pushed me to my absolute limit, I might have spent the rest of my life being her support system, losing myself piece by piece, never knowing what I was actually capable of when I stopped diminishing myself to make room for someone else. You are the strongest person I know, Jason said softly. I did not used to be. I admitted. I used to think strength meant enduring, accepting, sacrificing. But real strength is knowing when to say no, when to walk away, when to let people face the consequences of their choices, even when it hurts to watch. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, and I thought about the journey I had taken from that terrified, exhausted woman standing in her invaded home to the person I was now confident, boundaried, and finally, truly free. My phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from one of my friends, asking if I wanted to join a girls' trip to Cabo next month. 2 years ago, I would have said no, worried about spending money on myself when Chloe might need it. Now, I responded immediately, "Count me in." Jason saw me smiling at my phone. "Good news. Just remembering that my life is my own," I said, "and that I am allowed to enjoy it." He leaned over and kissed my temple. "Yes, you are." As I sit here now, looking back on everything that happened, I know that cutting off Chloe was the hardest and best thing I have ever done. It cost me the fantasy of the sister relationship I had always wanted, but it gave me back myself. To anyone listening who is trapped in a toxic relationship, who is being used and manipulated and told that setting boundaries makes you the bad guy, I want you to hear this: you are not responsible for other people's dysfunction. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. And walking away from someone who refuses to respect you is not cruel. It is self-preservation. It will hurt. It will be messy. People will misunderstand and judge you. You will question yourself 1,000 times. But on the other side of that pain is a life where you finally get to be the main character in your own story, instead of a supporting actor in someone else's drama. That life is worth fighting for. You are worth fighting for. So here is what I want to know from you. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? How did you find the courage to do it? And for those of you still struggling with that decision, what is holding you back? Drop your stories in the comments below, because sharing our experiences helps others know they are not alone. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because I share more stories of people who found their strength in impossible situations. Your support helps these stories reach people who desperately need to hear them. And remember, choosing yourself is not selfish. It is survival. Until next time, take care of yourselves. You deserve it.